Why don't we jump right into things here, man? There was some news that wasn't exactly hockey related, but it's something that struck a chord with you being a young Jewish man.
Yeah.
Deshaun Jackson made some remarks that could only really be described as anti-Semitic in the politest of terms. Talk to me about what that's been like for you to see, such high profile vitriol that's targeted at you, and tell me a bit about how that affected you and what you think about anti-Semitism in sports and kind of how far we have to go. I'll let you take the lead there.
Well, I think as a proud Jewish person, I'm very proud of my heritage and my culture. And, seeing these comments and posts and quotes that Deshaun Jackson shared was nothing but disturbing and disheartening. As a proud Jewish person, I believe, you look at what's going on right now with the Black Lives Matter movement, which is a great movement. It's a great, of course, everyone should get behind that because they do with Black Lives Matter, and it's a really important thing, especially right now with the injustices that are going around the world. I think that all minority communities and all communities that face injustice should fight and be together. And when Deshaun Jackson posted these things and then really for a few days stood by these comments, he didn't see anything wrong with them, didn't delete them until the Philadelphia Eagles and the world itself had a big backlash against him. I think the punishment wasn't harsh enough, but I'm glad that he is trying to educate himself. I think that's great. I like what Julian Edelman did, offering to take him to the Holocaust Museum in Washington and talk about the issues with over burgers and beers. I thought that was great. But with Deshaun Jackson, I see somebody that's trying to learn, regardless if that's being forced on by the team or the league. It's great to see Deshaun Jackson at least trying to learn about the issues that Jewish people have faced, with the Holocaust, of course, with the anti-Semitism that we face every year, every single day, really. In New York City, for example, anti-Semitism was the number one, hate crime. So it's not spoken about enough, and it really needs to be spoken about because Jews throughout the world have been facing these issues for years. And you look at Steven Jackson, and it's too bad because I feel like he lost all credibility. He's defending these Hitler comments, and he's basically saying that anti-Semitism isn't as big of an issue as we're saying, which is completely false. So with Steven Jackson, I think that's really what's bothering me is Steven Jackson's, not only defending Deshaun Jackson's claims, he's also sort of okay with them. And on top of that, you look at majority of the NFL, except Zach Banner and Julian Edelman and a couple other guys, majority of the NFL players haven't said one word about this issue. And I think that's what's really, really disheartening. It's not the comments itself from Deshaun Jackson. It's the fact that no one's really stepping up, to speak out against the injustices in the Jewish community, to speak out against anti-Semitism, against the hate crimes. Jewish people, it's not spoken about enough, but you look at that shooting at the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh last year, and you see all these other attacks. It's really terrible. I think in a time of divide around, especially in America and North America as a whole, I think it's important for our communities that have faced backlash and have faced injustices for no reason, just because of the color of their skin or just because of their faith. I think it's important that, we should stick together and fight together and be together. And for some reason, I'm not saying all, but I'm saying there's a good portion of people on Twitter, on the internet, and everything that are saying that anti-Semitism doesn't matter and that our issues don't matter as much as theirs. And I think that's wrong. I think we should stand up for all acts of injustice. And, it's just disheartening to see how a lot of people just haven't really touched up on it.
I think that was very well said on your part. When talking about Deshaun Jackson, he's a guy who I think a lot of people want to give the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I've always liked him. He's a former Buccaneer,
Yeah.
So, but what he said was indefensible. I mean, look, any time you're quoting Adolf Hitler
Yes.
in a positive light, there's no real coming back from that. I'm in agreement with you that I don't think the punishment was harsh enough. I think it's good that he's repenting and that he's kind of trying to right his wrong. And look, maybe he didn't fully understand whether that's excusable or not, whether that ignorance is excusable or not. It's not for me to decide. But I want to know what, as someone who's non-Jewish like myself, I want to know what you think that people like me can do to both educate themselves and to kind of raise awareness and join you in this cause and be more vocal about speaking out against anti-Semitic behavior and remarks?
Well, the biggest thing I recommend is to go to your local synagogue and speak to a rabbi. Rabbi, it's something that, if you're not Jewish, it's, I guess, talking to a priest or whatever. It's spiritual. It's very intellectual, and if you speak to a rabbi, they'll be more than glad to explain to you the issues that we face. I think there's no one better to speak to than a rabbi. Of course, you can look on the internet. You can look at the Holocaust. 6 million Jews and other people, of course, were murdered horrifically by the Nazis. And you look at all these hate crimes, especially, like I said, the statistic in New York, we faced the most hate crimes last year, and it's not a competition, but it's just the fact. So I think as a non-Jewish person, the way you educate yourself, of course, is to read online, read the injustices that Jewish people have faced, but more importantly, go to your local synagogue, go to any local Jewish leader, and just have a discussion with them and just talk about it. Because I think civil dialogue is the biggest strength we have to beating these injustices, and if you can do that, that would be great, and you'll learn quite a bit.
Do you think this is a problem that doesn't get spoken about enough within sports? Do you think this Deshaun Jackson thing is more of an isolated incident, or is it something that we definitely need to have a bigger conversation about?
Well, what I'll say is Julian Edelman, firstly, he mentioned in his 2.5 minute video on Instagram, which, by the way, if you're listening to this, make sure to watch that after this podcast, because it was a great message from Julian Edelman. And it was a message of Jewish strength where hate, you can't defeat hate with hate. You need to defeat hate with love and kindness, which is what I said in my podcast, because that's the truth. That's the Jewish way. That's what it says in our religion. You can't defeat hate with hate. I've spoken to a lot of Holocaust survivors, right? And every single one told me, you can't defeat hate with hate. Love, kindness will bring you peace. And I think that's a powerful message from the Holocaust survivors, and that's a powerful message that I'm going to send to you, because there's too much hate in this world, and you can't fight fire with fire. So to answer your question, Julian Edelman hasn't really said that there's been too many incidences of anti-Semitism. But in the context of it being an issue in sports, I believe that these sports athletes of all different various sports, we're talking up about racism finally, and that's great. We're not sticking to sports. We shouldn't. We should be sticking to what's important. We should be making change in this world. That's that we've brushed these issues under the rug for too long, and I think anti-Semitism should definitely be brought up. Like I said, it's one of the leading. Anti-Semitism has been on the rise over the years, especially in America. And I think, like I said previously, our communities, the Black community, the Jewish community, any other minority community, really needs to stand together and fight these battles together, because the more the merrier to fight these battles. We shouldn't be fighting against each other when we're trying to fight for what's right. So I think there is certainly an issue in the context in sports where not enough players are speaking out about it. But we haven't seen enough evidence of there actually being an anti-Semitism issue in sports. What I will say, though, is it's clear to me that a lot of these players are not educated. I saw a few of them defending, like Steven Jackson, defending Deshaun Jackson in his comments. And I think as a people, we should educate ourselves as much as possible for any injustice. So, yeah, I think these players in all sports, hockey, football, baseball, etc., should definitely educate themselves on this issue, because it's surprising how many people haven't even heard of the Holocaust. So I don't think it's necessarily in sports a Jewish hatred issue. I think it's more of an education issue.
That was really well said. And frankly, what you said about hate not being able to conquer hate it's moving. I think we all need to be a little kinder and a little more understanding to each other. And I think we all need to do the work to truly try to educate ourselves on what other people go through and what we can do to be a force for positive change in society. So thank you for that, Brandon. That was really well said.
It's a pleasure.